And then Mayor Coppinger will address you at precisely 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Well, I'll begin with saying good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for being here today. We've got some more important news that we want to roll out to the community, and again, we believe it to be good news. Following me, you're going to hear some of the guidelines that we're going to lay out as it relates to restaurants from Bonnie Deacons. She's an inspector of our restaurants, to be able to tell exactly what's expected of our restaurants as we move forward with any reopening. The other piece, I want to remind people that we're going to, as we said in the very beginning, we're going to do this in phases. We're not like dropping the gate and let everybody run out. We want to be, again, very cautious is how we do it. And there are certain things we want to make sure that our people in the community are aware of, where they're not putting themselves at risk and putting others at risk. So what we've basically done over the past several months is we've listened to the public, we've listened to the health experts, we've listened to task force, and we've listened to Governor Lee. What we've said consistently, do a lot to the resources that he's had, that we were going to follow Governor Lee's orders when they were handed down, which he did this morning. And I had the opportunity not only to listen to that, speak with people in his office. And again, I want to mention the fact that we have said consistently that we were going to follow the orders of Governor Lee. We really trust the group of people he has on his economic recovery team. We trust the fact that we have one of, if not the best health department in the Southeast that's been doing a tremendous amount of testing, a tremendous amount of monitoring, a tremendous amount of contact tracing. They will continue to do that. In hopes that, again, that we don't see any spikes. But what I'm here today to say is that effective on Monday, the 27th of April, we will begin opening restaurants, or I should say reopening the restaurants. It's going to come with a lot of guidelines, specific guidelines and requirements. The person in our health department that enforces that is Bonnie Deacons. You'll hear from her in a few minutes, and Bonnie will tell you what's expected. Again, opening these restaurants, she's the person that enforces the activities in a restaurant and how it will be dealt with. It'll be followed on Wednesday, April the 29th. As Governor Lee mentioned, we'll begin to open retail businesses that aren't open. As you know, some retail is. And again, it's going to come with strict guidelines. I also need to say that all of these guidelines will be posted on our website, as well as the health department's website, and any information that you need in the future as it relates to any of these reopenings should go to our hotline at the health department if you have any questions with this. And Bonnie will do that, or Becky Barnes, our administrator of our health department, is here as well to answer any questions. The businesses that are going to reopen, we continue to request that their implementation that they've done as far as social distancing. It's extremely important. As we continue to open up, the social distancing, I'm convinced, has played a big part in our being able to not to experience as many severe cases of this dreaded viruses as we have. So again, we want to encourage this social distancing, again, being 6 feet apart from one another, and to have gatherings of fewer than 10. That's extremely important. None of that's gone away. Also, personal hygiene is going to be even more important now that we're going to allow people back into restaurants. We'll talk about, Bonnie will, some of the requirements with the restaurants and the way that we're going to be able to spread people on social distancing. But again, personal hygiene, these things are really important. I'd like to say to any of the workers that are going back to work, you know, one of the things you should do before you leave the house every single day is take your temperature. It's really important. If you got a fever or if you don't feel well, folks, stay home. Stay home till you find out what's wrong. But that's really, really important as well. You know, we think it's important to open back up the economy, but let's never forget the most important thing is people's personal safety. And we have to protect ourselves from others, but just as importantly, we have to protect others from ourselves. So if you're not feeling well, you're running a fever, do not go to work. Do not go to work. If the businesses, these restaurants that are open, when you hear these guidelines and these rules, it's your responsibility to restructure yourself if you're not able to right now to adhere to the rules. Before you open, you have to be able to structure yourself to where you can, as far as the social distancing goes or any of the other requirements that are put forth in the guidelines, because that's what Ms. Deakins will be looking for when she visits your restaurant. I can assure you there will be people that complain, and every complaint will be followed up, and again, we're putting mechanisms in place to be able to do that. I want to, again, strongly advise individuals only to visit the places that's necessary. We still know that there's a vulnerable population out there. Anyone that's 65 or older is considered part of the vulnerable population, but also the people that have underlying conditions. We know that every single fatality we've had in this county has been a result of some underlying conditions where the COVID-19 virus actually took their lives. So again, it's really important to note that if you're in a high-risk group, that doesn't mean that you should still be out there. You should still be at home protecting yourself from this virus. There's no doubt about this. So again, the community has been extremely helpful in all of us working together, coming together to make this decision plausible and allow us to open up. And we got to continue our due diligence in making sure that we're protecting ourselves against one another and also against this virus. And we need to be sure that we look at our vulnerable populations and continue to monitor them in terms of making sure they're not exposing themselves into risky situations. So again, I just want to say, before I turn it over to Bonnie Deakins, we're very grateful to live in a community where people come together, where people have listened. They're very much aware of the seriousness of this. They're very much have been in compliance for the most part. But as we go into this next phase, it becomes even more critical that the ones of us in the communities continue to adhere to the guidelines as we go back into the restaurants, and then we'll be showing you on our website and other places the guidelines of other things as we start to reopen. But again, we're going to take baby steps, and this is the first baby step we're taking in the first phase of what we're trying to accomplish here. So with that, I'm going to ask Bonnie Deakins if she'd come forward.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. I want to take just a few minutes to go over some restaurant guidelines, and these are for restaurant employees, owners, and their customers, because everyone is going to have to work together to do this safely. So I want to start first with protecting restaurant employees. Restaurant employees should wear face coverings and gloves, and these can include the cloth face coverings. They don't have to be surgical masks. Restaurant employees should report any symptoms of illness to their supervisor immediately, and as the mayor said, do not come to work if you are ill. And restaurant employees should follow daily sanitation protocols. Restaurant customers need to remember that we have to limit occupancy to 50% of seating capacity in these restaurants to begin with. So only 50% of seating capacity will be allowed. Tables should be spaced 6 feet apart. Limit seating to 6 people per table. Use social distancing in waiting areas. Keep bar areas closed. No live music venues. Screen customers with basic questions about COVID-19 symptoms, basically asking them how they are feeling on that day. In basic business operations, the guidelines are to sanitize all front of the house contact surfaces every 2 hours. Use disposable menus or sanitize menus between each use. Use rolled silverware and napkins that are stored in sealed bins. Sanitize chairs and tabletop items after each table turn. Do not offer self-service buffets, shared condiments, or beverage station reuse, and provide training for all food handlers. And like I said, this is important for all of us to do this safely, to open safely, to protect everybody and get us going again. All our customers in restaurants, all our employers, and all the business owners need to cooperate to follow the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll open it up for questions, but before we do that, I just want to say again, if you take note of what Bonnie has just said to the public, is there are many guidelines and restrictions about how we're opening these, and again, it's for the people's safety in the community, and also to help the people that run the restaurants or own the restaurants to know what's expected of them, and let there be no doubt. Today, we expect people to comply with these guidelines. Okay, we'll open up for questions. Jake?
I guess for me, with opening back up, Hamilton County on Monday and having additional testing sites, was more testing kind of an influence for you to say, hey, we're ready to get back to being open again with more testing sites now and more testing being done daily?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that we're going to continue. We've been aggressively testing. We're going to continue to be aggressively testing. But one of the things, I know you've heard me say this before, that's really important, though, is the monitoring people, the contact tracing. We've been able to contact trace, and Becky Barnes is certainly more qualified to answer this, but on our contact tracing, we've been able to do the tracing of 100% of the people that's been involved. That's really important. And another thing you should know, too, when we see people, because we look at this aggregate number of people that are testing positive, and I think our number's now up to 141, and 102 of those people have fully recovered. And with that number that goes up to 141, you have an aggregate number. Some of those are like families, okay? So, that instead of being one case, it may be 4, or maybe 3, whatever the number may be. But I say that because all of these things have weighed into the decision making about where we are and looking at the data that the health department has in other places. But again, that's why we really feel comfortable when the governor put together this really great notable task force for the economic recovery group. And it became obvious to us that given the data that we have and the work that our health department's doing, coupled with what they're doing on that level, that we would follow his orders. Sydney?
You mentioned still not gathering in large groups, and Governor
Yes.
Lee had said still church services need to be remotely. So can churches hold services this weekend?
We're still asking people, not to gather in groups of 10 or more. There is one specific group of people that are working on trying to get our churches back where congregations can meet as quickly as possible. And again, the faith-based people that are working on this and the people that are doing this committee, I look for some information to come out pretty quickly. But again, I mean, it's something that's really extremely important to our community, as we all know. I mean, we just had an extremely religious holiday with Easter, and a lot of people were really disappointed that they couldn't, participate. And they found creative ways to do that. Certainly, it's something I personally have missed, is the opportunity to go there. But again, we will continue to work on that. But for right now, we're not comfortable allowing groups of 10 or more to meet.
Chris and Jake.
Follow up on that, because that was my question when it comes to these restaurants. Maybe the health department's better served to answer this than you are, sir. If they are, I apologize. No more than 10 or more restaurants that seat on normal 200, 250, 300 people, cut that in half to 100 to 150 people.
Right.
That pretty much violates no more than 10 or more people in a room. So how do we circle that square in opening restaurants?
I'll take a stab at it because I'll tell you, what I know from being involved and engaged in some of the conversations. As you noted, what Bonnie said was that they're going to be able to open at 50% of their capacity. In addition to that, they can only seat 6 at the table. In addition to that, there's a distance of 6 feet or more that they have to be separated from each other. So this is a controlled environment in terms of seating arrangements, social distancing, and that type of thing. So that is the guidelines for restaurants. And as we move through other types of assemblies, like you're talking about, they may very well be where they can do more than 10. It won't be that way forever. But we're just right now, as we start to reopen things, there's guidelines for certain types of industries, and that's what the guideline is for the restaurants. And again, it's something that we concur with that the governor's task force has come up with. I mean, you want to add anything, maybe you're welcome.
Well, I mean, this question is kind of for the health department right
Sure.
here with testing, with more rampant testing and stuff like that. And then in Shelby County, they're doing antibody testing now for the virus. Are we anywhere close to doing antibody testing here in Hamilton County? Or what's the process going like that?
We are not doing antibody testing right now.
Well, is there conversation of it ever happening here, though? That's kind of more my question.
There's still a lot of unknowns about antibody testing. There's a lot of different type of antibody tests. It's our stance right now that the science has not quite caught up with that to make a decision to move with antibody testing.
Sydney?
I just wanted to reiterate, so churches should not gather this Sunday.
Not just yet. We're not ready for that on a place of assembly. But again, let's. I want to go back to the antibody testing because I think that's important. And the health professionals, I think she gave a really great response to that. But I really want to be 100% transparent about this. There is some discussion going on right now. It won't be the Hamilton County lab, but we're using Baylor. We've leased their lab, but it's run by Becky Barnes and her staff. They're looking at doing antibody testing, and they're going to probably be capable of doing that in a couple of weeks. What we're trying to look at right now, how that's going to fit in, it's right now what we're trying to do. We're after, the COVID-19, positives so that we can go out and stop that in the community. Antibody testing, which I've learned from the experts, and I'm certainly not one of them, is not something that we're looking at right now as a necessary need in the community. What we want to do is find the people that are positive and have an opportunity to contact trace to try to kind of stop the spread of the virus in our community.
Chris, then Jake.
Just some clarification, if you would, and sorry if this goes a little bit longer, the question asking than normal. When we talk about restaurants, I know you're talking like Texas Roadhouse, those type of restaurants, and then bars. So like a normal bar is still to be closed, or can they open and seat people if they serve food? The clarification on that, if you would, and then follow up on that also. When you talk about retail, are we talking the box stores, the mom and pops? Are we still keeping the malls closed? Or are they allowed to open under this? Just the clarification on what businesses we're talking about when it comes to retail.
In the areas that we're talking about, there's not a mall that falls under the jurisdiction of the city of Chattanooga. I will add that since we started this, there was the 7 small cities that, or smaller cities that are a coalition unanimously came on board. And since then, Walden's Ridge is on board with what we're doing. And then Signal Mountain, I think, is going to make a decision on Monday. But as it relates to retail, what we're saying there, which will occur on Wednesday, actually, there will be guidelines that they're going to be posted today on our website of what will be required there. And again, we are talking about anything that's retail.
For me, this is going back to the testing, but like with the 2 new sites and you guys are doing referrals anymore for people to get tested, do you have a ballpark how many people you've tested since doing that? And with that in mind, do we see the curve of the virus here flattening a little bit now compared to, say, a week ago?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let Becky answer that, but I want to say this about when you talk about the flattening of the virus or whatever. I mean, we certainly expect, because we're testing more people this weekend. I know they've already got like 360 signed up. Becky can give you those numbers for Saturday, I think Sunday as well. So there's, we're going to be testing more people. But what we really, continue to pay a lot of attention to are the number of people that we have in hospitals, and again, why they're there. And so as we move forward, I can't emphasize enough, and we've said this from the very beginning, how important testing is. They've ramped this up in the health department tremendously. She can give you those numbers because a lot of times you don't hear or the reports of the negatives. We just talk about the positives, the people that come back positive. But the numbers of the availability of testing, what's really important. Right now, today, this is important to know, no one that's asked to be tested has not gotten a test. The health department's been able to meet all that demand. A lot of people talk about the testing and say, well, Hamilton County, is lagging behind or whatever. The fact of the matter is where they're talking about lagging behind was in the period of time we could turn the test around. When we opened our own lab, it got to be turned around within, the same day, which we thought was extremely important too. So we got several people in the room here to do contact tracing so they could get right on top of that. So what I say, is that we're going to continue to be testing full force. It's really important. It's a critical part of being able to reopen. And so again, note that anybody and we encourage anybody that wants to be tested. There's never been anybody that's wanted to be tested, to my knowledge, and Becky can correct me if I'm wrong, that hasn't had a test. We were having that conversation in the health department today. So if you're out there and you haven't been tested and you felt like you wanted to be, your doctor might have said to you, you don't need to be tested, you don't have any symptoms, that's probably the case. But if you just want to be tested, even though you're asymptomatic, no one's been turned away for that. We're testing everybody in the community that wants to be tested. Becky, you might want to elaborate.
Well, currently at our Bonnie Shire site, we are booking 150 drive-through appointments a day. So that's a doubling of what we were doing the previous week. And we're not turning anyone away. Plus, even with those 150 appointments, we will fit in people, if a physician calls and says, this person really needs to get in. If it's a first responder, healthcare worker, we fit people in addition to those 150. And this weekend we have 360 scheduled for Saturday, and then another 360 at the Riverfront Parkway. I want to make sure I get the street right. Riverfront Parkway admissions testing site. And also there, we aren't turning anyone away. If you drive up and you haven't made an appointment, it'll be a little slower because we'll have to get your information from you then. But you'll be seen. And then also, because it's in a neighborhood where, close to where people could possibly walk. People can walk up. We have a walk-up lane too to accommodate people that might live there. So those, and then also we have various testing partners that we're working with to try to reach as many in the community as we can. Currently, our lab has a capacity of 550 tests a day.
Chris, then Sydney, then one more after that, and Mayor will make a final comment. Chris.
At what point, and Becky, at what point do you reevaluate the advice on kind of opening it up a little bit more? Is there a number count of new infections, new positives that you sit here and go, we gotta roll this back a little bit, or do you have a number in mind when it comes to something like that of where we're at to kind of make the advice to go, hey, let's roll this back some?
I don't think there's an exact number, as the mayor said. Looking at hospitalizations is a big number to look at, and we've been looking at that daily number of people in ICU. Clearly, if we saw an upward surge, I mean, the mayor and I talk at least twice a day about our data, and we are all thoroughly looking at this data on an ongoing, continuous basis. I think we all have to learn to live with this virus. It's going to be with us for until we have either good treatments or a vaccine. So learning to live with it means that, there are certain, as the mayor said, certain vulnerable populations that even the opening of the restaurants, that doesn't change anything for them. It's still not safe for them to be circulating in general population. But for some, with appropriate face covering, social distancing and all, it's part of us learning to, balance living with this virus and trying to have an economy too.
Sydney?
I know before you had said you were going to be able to do 360 tests a day during the weekend at a weekend location, and now you're saying you've got that many people booked and you're able to do 550, is I think what you had said a day?
Well, our lab can run 550 a day.
Okay.
But
So then, are we maxing out then on this coming weekend of how many tests we can do at that location? Or are we able to actually do more than the 360 we originally said?
we could do more. We will take more than if the turnout was, much more than we expected. I mean, we hope that, we want people to come out, but we won't be able to, but we want to also be able to accommodate everybody that comes.
Jake, final question.
So it's kind of a two-parter going back to the restaurants. I know you have a policy for workers to wear masks and gloves, but this is just, if you guys saw a complaint, if a restaurant worker at a restaurant that opens back up tests positive for the virus, what will happen to that restaurant? What will be the plan there in that situation?
Well, I think I can answer that. That goes back to our contact tracing. And that means every positive person, we review their, everything they've done 2 days prior to when the onset of their illness or the onset of their symptoms. So if they worked during that time, we would try to ascertain who would have been at risk. Now, if the server is wearing a mask, then that should definitely decrease any kind of spread. But it's just our traditional contact tracing that we would institute.
Second part?
The second part was really to go back to your discussion, Mayor Coppinger, about this plan to open up restaurants at 50%, retail at 50%. You said that you're going off Governor Lee's guidelines. Have you talked to the hospitals here and like medical professionals in the health department about just, are you 100% confident in this plan going forward, or are you a little skeptical about some things?
Yes. Well, yes. First of all, we wouldn't enact it if we weren't 100% right. I mean, obviously, we got a lot of confidence in the plan and going forward with the other parts of industries that will be opened up. So, we look forward to the success. And again, as Becky mentioned to you, we've been very fortunate here. And contact tracing plays a big part of that. And one of the things that I was going to ask Becky to kind of elaborate on is that we should never forget, one of the reasons when we go out of the house, we need to protect ourselves. And one of the reasons is because there's people that are in our community that are asymptomatic, that don't know, they don't have any symptoms, that are carriers. So again, if we're going to, if you're going to wait forever until there's a vaccination or whatever, by then, we're still going to be faced with the same issue about who's carrying and who's not. And that's one of the things that's always missing in a lot of the conversations. I mean, it's real easy, when people are symptomatic and they go and they're tested and whatever, the contact tracing for that is, they do a phenomenal job of that, but they don't know what they don't know, right? You don't know the people that are carriers that don't even know because they don't have any symptoms, right? And that's the real tragic part about this whole virus from the very beginning. We've said that. Again, it's if you got a day and the numbers go up, and that's how they find these people that are asymptomatic through contact tracing. So again, we just ask the public to again be cautious. If you're in one of those high-risk groups, you don't need to be out unless it's just absolutely necessary to run to the grocery store, the pharmacy, or whatever. Other than that, there's no need to be out if you're in the high-risk group, and that starts at the age of 65 and above, people with underlying conditions. So,
Can I ask you one more question, if that's okay, about
Sure.
enforcement with the restaurants and stuff like that? How are you going to enforce 50% capacity for these restaurants and these retailers? How are you going to be able to monitor who goes in, who comes out?
Well, it's just like anything else that the public is the best to make us aware of it, and when they complain to the hotline, that will be investigated. That's what the health department, that's what the people that's over your food every day that go out and monitor restaurants. That's what Bonnie's staff does. So again, just as is the case with any other types of investigation, a lot of that information, the leaks come from the public. So
the restaurants can't, but they can take responsibility for themselves and limit who comes in and out, right?
See, here's the thing, and I truly believe this. We've come a long way with the awareness and education piece of this COVID virus. And what we're saying to the restaurants is, we got enough confidence in you that you're going to adhere to the rules. I have confidence that the restaurants are going to play by the guidelines. If they don't, we will step in, but I have confidence that's going to happen. So I'd rather not play the what ifs, because I think they're eager to get back to work, and we're eager for them to do that. So again, I just ask everybody in the community to be patient as we continue to take baby steps, open up, and again, have the confidence that we live in a community where people work together, where we're very blessed to have the resources we have with our health department, with our medical society here, and with our hospitals. All of these people working together to make this community what it is today. So thank you very much for being here.